The Arizona sun hung in the horizon like a molten iron, mercilessly burning every line on Jackson Hayes's face, every stain on his hands. Nobody would search for a man here in this hellish heat. Nobody would find a fugitive with the blood of his comrades on his hands among these scorching sands. 5 years had passed since the Civil War, but Hayes's dreams were still filled with gunpowder and screams. The ghosts of his own men, whom he'd killed thinking they were the enemy, circled his tent every night. Hayes stopped his horse beside a dry riverbed, his canteen nearly empty. As he carefully drank the water, a sound from the distance caught his attention. A moan, no, a crying sound. Drawing his gun and advancing with cautious steps, he saw 2 figures in the shadow of a rocky outcrop. One was a motionless woman lying down, the other a small girl bent over her, sobbing uncontrollably. "Hey, little lady," Hayes said, lowering his gun. "What happened here?" The girl flinched, looking at him with fear. She was clearly Mexican, perhaps 6 or 7 years old. The woman opened her eyes, her breathing shallow and irregular. Her face was sunburned, her lips cracked. On the side of her chest, a dark blood stain had spread across her dress. "Por favor," she whispered. "Mi hija, mi hija." Hayes shook his head. His Spanish was limited. "English?" he asked. The woman swallowed with difficulty. "My daughter," she said in broken English. "Please protect my daughter. He will come. He will find us." Hayes frowned. "Who's coming? Who did this to you?" The woman closed her eyes, her face contorting with pain. "El Diablo, my father." The little girl held her mother's hand, her eyes filled with tears. "Will my mother die, Señor?" she asked, her voice trembling. Hayes's throat tightened. He couldn't lie, not with that innocence, that hope in the child's eyes. He knelt down, pressing the last of the water from his canteen to the woman's lips. "What's your name, little lady?" he asked the girl, his voice lacking its usual harshness. "Lucia," said the girl, "and my mother is Isabela." Hayes nodded, checking the woman's pulse. It was weak and growing weaker. "Why are you running, Isabela? Who did this to you?" Isabela opened her eyes, her gaze no longer focusing. "My father, Don Fernando Vasquez. Rich, powerful, ruthless. I loved the wrong man. Lucia's father, a farmer. My father killed him." The woman coughed, blood coming from her mouth. "He will kill us too. Lucia, I won't give her to him." Hayes understood. He had seen such men in the war, men whom money and power made untouchable, men who recognized no law. "I can help," he said, surprising himself with his own words. "I'll keep Lucia safe." Isabela's eyes filled with tears, and with a trembling hand she removed the cross from her neck. "Take it," she said, "for Lucia. Keep it." Hayes took the cross, holding the woman's hand. "Pray for her," Isabela said, "and keep her away from my father." Her eyes cleared for a moment, looking intently at Hayes's face. "You are a good man. There is pain in your eyes, but there is mercy too." Then she turned to Lucia, stroking her daughter's hair with her last strength. "Te amo, mi corazón, mi pequeña rosa del desierto." And Isabela's hand fell, her eyes remained open, but for her, the film had ended. Lucia looked at her mother's motionless body, not fully understanding what had happened. "Mama?" she whispered, then louder. "Mama?" Hayes closed the woman's eyes, gently pulling Lucia back. "Your mother is very tired, Lucia," he said, the words knotting in his throat. "She's sleeping now." Lucia shook her head, instinctively knowing that her mother's stillness was not sleep. Her small hands gripped Hayes's arm. "Will she come back?" Hayes took a deep breath. "No, little lady, she won't be coming back." While Hayes worked to bury Isabela's lifeless body, a plan was forming in his mind. They would go north, perhaps to Colorado. Somewhere no one knew them. But first they had to cross the desert, and Hayes had a feeling that Don Fernando Vasquez would use all his power to find them. As he covered the grave with sand, Lucia wept silently, placing desert flowers on her mother's grave with her small hands. "My mother called me Desert Rose," she whispered, "because I could find beauty even in the harshest place." Hayes knelt down, meeting the girl at eye level. "Now listen to me, Lucia. We're in danger, and we need to move. Your grandfather is a bad man, and he's looking for us. I promise to keep you safe, but you need to trust me and do as I say, okay?" Lucia wiped away her tears, lifting her small chin with determination. "Who are you, senor?" Hayes hesitated for a moment. "My name is Jackson, Jackson Hayes, and now, I guess I'm your guardian." Hayes seated Lucia on the back of his horse, and they began moving north, passing through the rare shaded areas. The desert was merciless, but Hayes knew mercilessness well. He had learned in the war what a person could endure, what they could do. Lucia was quiet, occasionally whispering her mother's name, sometimes murmuring prayers in Spanish. As she fell asleep with the rocking of the horse, Hayes felt a strange protective instinct as her small, vulnerable body leaned against his chest, something he hadn't felt in a long time. Responsibility, meaning. As the sun set, they made camp by a small creek. Hayes lit a small fire from dry brush, and they shared the little food they had been able to bring. "Why does your grandfather want you, Lucia?" he asked, sitting beside the girl. Lucia lowered her head, playing with the dried meat in her hand. "My father died. My mother said that my grandfather wants to turn me into a ghost. He would take me to his big house and make me a ghost." Hayes frowned. "A ghost?" Lucia nodded. "My mother was like that. She wouldn't talk, wouldn't laugh. Grandfather decided everything." "I understand," Hayes said slowly. Vasquez had broken his daughter's will, turning her into a puppet. Now he wanted to do the same to his granddaughter. "I won't take you to him, Lucia, I promise." Lucia looked at him, a mixture of trust and fear in her eyes. "Why are you running, Senor Hayes?" Hayes flinched. The child's intuition was sharp and direct. I did bad things too," he finally said. "By mistake, in the war. And now some people want to punish me." Lucia reached out and took his hand, her tiny fingers grasping Hayes's calloused hand. "My mother used to say that God forgives everyone, if they are truly sorry." Hayes smiled bitterly. "Your mother was a very wise woman, Lucia." In the firelight, in the middle of the desert, a strange bond was beginning to form between them. Two lost souls, both fugitives, both broken. Perhaps they could repair each other. Morning came with a merciless golden glare. Hayes had kept watch all night, dozing occasionally. Lucia had fallen into a deep sleep under the starry sky, holding her mother's cross tightly. Hayes hated to wake her. The peaceful expression on the child's face was incredible after the tragedy she had experienced the day before. Still, they needed to move. Don Fernando's men might have tracked them by now. "Lucia," he called gently. "Time to wake up, little lady." Lucia opened her eyes, for a moment unable to remember where she was. Then her face darkened as she realized her mother's absence. "My mother, she really died, didn't she?" Hayes nodded. He wouldn't lie to children. "Yes, Lucia, but she's always with you, in your heart." He reached out and touched the girl's chest. "And here." He pointed to Isabela's cross. "This will protect you." Lucia held the cross, swallowed. "Where are we going now, Senor Hayes?" Hayes looked east, the sun rising from the horizon. "North, a cold and green place. We'll be safe there." For 2 days they crossed the desert, from one waterhole to another, from one shadow to the next. Hayes was teaching Lucia everything he knew about desert life. Which cacti held water, which tracks belonged to which animals, how to navigate by the stars. Lucia was a quick learner, sometimes making observations that surprised even Hayes. "That bird," she said once, pointing to an eagle circling in the sky. "My mother used to say they carry souls to heaven. Has my mother's soul become a bird too?" Hayes looked up at the sky, his throat tightening. "Maybe," he said. "Maybe she's watching over us now." This thought seemed to comfort Lucia. That evening, by the campfire, the girl began to tell Hayes about her family. Her father, Miguel, was a brave farmer who had married Isabela despite her family's disapproval. They had a small farm. They were happy. "But then my grandfather came," said Lucia, her voice trembling. "With his men. My father tried to protect us, but they shot him." My mother took me and ran." Hayes clenched his teeth, his anger rising. He knew men like Don Fernando, men who thought power and money were everything, who disregarded lives. But Lucia's story affected him in a different way. "Your grandfather will never find you," he said with determination. "I won't allow it." Lucia looked at him for a long time, tears in her eyes. "You won't die like my mother, will you, Senor Hayes?" Hayes swallowed. He couldn't lie. "I'll do my best, Lucia, and you can call me Jackson." At noon on the third day, a town appeared on the horizon. A small stop on the way to Flagstaff, consisting of a few wooden buildings, a barn, and a small church. Hayes became uneasy. Any place with people could be dangerous. But the horses needed rest, and they needed supplies. "We won't stay here long," he told Lucia. "And you won't leave my side, okay?" The girl nodded, holding tightly to Hayes' coat. When they reached the town, a few curious glances greeted them. A white man and a small Mexican girl were an unusual sight. Hayes tied the horse to a post, took Lucia's hand, and headed for the town's only store. When they entered, the old man behind the counter raised his eyebrows. "How can I help you?" he asked, his voice neither friendly nor hostile. "Some supplies," said Hayes, pulling a few coins from his pocket. "And feed for a horse." The old man nodded, reaching for the shelf. "Also," said Hayes, lowering his voice, "have you seen any Mexican riders near here recently? Well-dressed, armed." The old man paused, looking carefully at Hayes. "Are you talking about Don Fernando's men? The owner of the big ranch?" Hayes swallowed, nodding. The shopkeeper sighed. "A group came here yesterday. They were looking for a young woman and a little girl everywhere." Lucia held Hayes's hand tighter, beginning to tremble. "What did you tell them?" Hayes asked. "Nothing," said the old man. "I don't like those men. But let me tell you this. They're still around, and Don Fernando is with them." A cold shiver ran down Hayes's spine. "How close are they?" The old man nodded toward the east. "They're spending the night at the Mendez farm, about 10 miles from here. They're supposed to leave tomorrow, but I don't know which direction." Hayes nodded, leaving money for the supplies. "Thank you," he said. "And don't tell anyone you saw us." The old man looked at Lucia, then pulled a chocolate from under the shelf. "Here you go, little lady," he said with unexpected gentleness. "Everyone needs something sweet sometimes." Lucia hesitated, looking at Hayes. Hayes nodded in approval, and the girl took the chocolate. "Gracias, señor," she said softly. The old man smiled. "Be careful," he said, turning to Hayes. "Don Fernando's revenge is merciless." When they left the store, the sun was setting and the streets were beginning to empty. Hayes quickly helped Lucia onto the horse, wanting to get away from the town. Just as they were about to move, a black-robed priest coming out of the church stopped them. "Wait," said the man, running to their side, out of breath. "I can help you." Hayes reflexively moved his hand to his gun and said, "How?" The priest looked around, making sure no one was listening to them. "Shopkeeper Thomas told me about you. You're running from Don Fernando, aren't you?" Hayes didn't answer, but his look was enough. "There's a barn behind the church," said the priest. "You can stay there for the night. It's not safe to wander around here. Don Fernando has eyes everywhere." Hayes thought for a moment. Could he trust the priest? But there was genuine concern on the man's face, and staying outside in the open field could be even more dangerous. "All right," he finally said. "But my gun stays with me, Father." The priest nodded. "I understand, son. Come before it gets dark." The church barn was a warm and dry place, the piles of hay forming a comfortable bed. The priest brought them food and clean water, asking no questions. Lucia was exhausted from fatigue, falling asleep on her hay bed before finishing her meal. Hayes went out into the church courtyard with the priest, and they talked under the starry sky. "Don Fernando is a dangerous man," said the priest, fear in his voice. "Why is he pursuing his daughter and granddaughter so relentlessly? Is it just pride?" Hayes sighed. "Control," he said. "He wants to control everything. He can't stand Lucia being free, making her own choices." The priest nodded. "Just as Jesus said, Let the children come to me and do not hinder them. But some people want to control even the souls of children. Hayes looked up at the sky. The stars were shining. I did bad things, Father. In the war. I killed my own men with a wrong order. Now they're looking for me. The priest remained silent for a while. Are you sorry? He finally asked. Hayes nodded, his eyes burning. Every day, every night. The priest placed his hand on his shoulder. Then perhaps this little girl could be your redemption. Perhaps God is giving you a chance to save yourself by saving a life. Hayes wanted to believe this. He really did. What if I fail? What if I can't protect Lucia either? The priest took a deep breath. Then at least you will have tried, son. And sometimes a battle fought and lost is more honorable than a battle never attempted. At midnight, Hayes lay down beside Lucia, but sleep wouldn't come to his eyes. His mind was filled with the fact that Don Fernando was so close to them. They needed to continue running. But where and how far? He had lived as a fugitive for years, but now he had someone to protect beside him. He listened to Lucia's small, regular breathing, the peaceful expression on the child's face giving him peace too. I will protect you, he whispered into the darkness, until my last breath. At dawn, what woke Hayes wasn't the neighing of a horse, but his instincts. The muffled sounds coming from outside indicated that the town's sleep was being unnaturally interrupted. He quickly sat up, checking his gun with the habits he'd acquired over years as a soldier. Lucia was still asleep, with the peace of a child who sees her mother in her dreams on her face. The first light filtering through the cracks in the wooden wall heralded the approaching danger. When Hayes opened his barn door a few inches, he saw shadows moving in the street. The silhouettes belonged to men wearing dark ponchos with silver embroidery, Mexican bounty hunters, Don Fernando's mercenaries. They had surrounded the town. He withdrew and cursed. As he began to gently shake Lucia, the back door of the barn creaked open. Hayes aimed his gun, his finger about to pull the trigger when he realized it was the priest. Thank God you're still here, said the priest, his voice turning to a whisper in panic. Don Fernando, he came himself, with 12 of his men. Sweat was dripping from the priest's forehead, the light from the gas lamp he held dancing on his trembling face. They're searching every house one by one. It's only a matter of time before they come to the church. Hayes fully woke Lucia. The girl's eyes opened with fear, but thankfully she made no sound. She had gained experience sensing danger too early. Or rather, she had been forced to. We'll go out the back, said Hayes, gathering their belongings. The priest painfully shook his head. Impossible. They've covered every exit. 4 men are watching the main street, the others the side streets. Don Fernando has offered the villagers 1,000 pesos to find the girl. Hayes felt a moment of desperation. Then a wave of anger filled him. Then we'll fight, he said, checking his gun. When he looked at Lucia's pale face, he saw the same expression the child had after her mother's death. The same numb acceptance. The same silent fear. No, said the priest, suddenly with a determined voice. You don't have to shed blood. There is another way. Hayes looked impatiently. What way? You say every exit from town is covered? The priest raised the gas lamp a little. The fearful expression on his face had changed. The church building was built in the 1830s. During the Civil War, it was part of the Underground Railroad. Hayes's eyebrows furrowed. The Underground Railroad. The escape network for runaway slaves to the north, to freedom. There's a tunnel from the church basement, the priest continued. It leads to the river, a mile outside of town. From a distance, the sound of horses approaching the church was heard. Time to decide, said the priest, nervously looking at the door. Hayes looked at Lucia. The girl was clinging to him in fear, but there was something else in her eyes. Trust. She trusted him. This was a new feeling for him, someone's life completely in his hands. Show us the tunnel, he said in a low voice. Quickly. The priest nodded. Using the hay as cover, they left the barn. As they glided toward the church, Hayes saw armed men moving in the shadows. Don Fernando's angels of death looking for his granddaughter, and this time they wouldn't leave her alive when they found her. The basement was dark and damp, with the smell of earth and mold in the air. The priest lit a torch with trembling hands, pulling an old shelf. Behind the shelf was a low tunnel entrance. "This will take you to the river," he said. "From there go north to the mountains. You can hide there." Hayes looked at the tunnel, then turned to Lucia. "Are you ready?" Lucia's eyes were wide open, but she nodded bravely. Hayes looked at the priest. "Thank you, Father. How can we repay our debt?" The priest smiled. "I will pray for you, and perhaps one day you will help someone else." From outside, the sound of the church doors opening came. "Go now," said the priest frantically. Hayes took Lucia's hand and entered the tunnel, moving forward into the darkness. The tunnel was narrow and low. Hayes had to bend down. Lucia, despite appearing frightened, was advancing with courage. "Are you scared?" Hayes asked. Lucia shook her head. "No," she said, then hesitated. "Maybe a little. But my mother used to say that being afraid isn't a problem. What matters is being brave despite the fear." Hayes smiled in the darkness. "Your mother was right. I'm scared too. But when I'm with you, I feel braver, Lucia." This was one of the most honest things he had ever said in his life. Nothing had affected him as much as the ghosts of the men he had killed, as this little girl for whom he could give his life to save. Perhaps the priest was right. Perhaps Lucia was his redemption, his salvation. The tunnel, as the priest had said, led to the dried riverbed outside the town. The sun had begun to rise, and the surroundings were brightening. "What will we do now?" asked Lucia, dusting off her dress. Hayes looked around. They needed horses. "We'll walk," he said, "toward the mountains. Maybe we can find a horse there, or we can proceed in some other way." Lucia looked at him with trust, extending her hand. As Hayes held her small hand for the first time in a long time, he felt he truly had a purpose.